Hello.
Hello, Bade. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for accepting this invite on such a short notice and
Oh,
be our first guest on this meeting.
it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
How are you
I'm
doing
so
today?
I'm good. Yes, it's a little chilly here. Are you in Iowa too?
No, I moved to Dallas, so I'm in Dallas, Texas now.
Okay. Well,
And
maybe it's a tad warmer there. It's like 20 degrees right now, but it was below zero when I got up this morning. So,
wow, wow, I remember it used to be very cold when it would get very cold, yes.
yeah. So how's the business launch going?
So it's the launch is I'm just in the starting phase of it, and right now I have a plan how to move forward, and I want to start with the coaching and consulting industry, and that's what I have been learning for the last several years, being in these my mastermind communities, and most recently I discovered the school community online, and it is one of the platforms where people are selling the courses, coaching programs, and I thought this might be a good platform to launch these services as we move forward.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. So do you know how many people are going to be participating with us?
Not today, no, I'm not sure. I did send invite to quite a number of people on LinkedIn and on the school platform also to a group of people. So I'm not sure how many people may attend, but even if no one else is attending and we two are here, this will be a very useful resource as a recording on that platform that people can watch later and find useful, use from this masterclass.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. So are we still with the same agenda that you had sent to me before? I'm looking at it, so pretty much the
Right.
same.
Let me just send you another presentation that I have prepared, and or let me just share my screen with you this way. Uh, and One second. First, let me send you the email. That way, you will have that presentation with you, and then
Okay.
I can start that presentation. Meanwhile, how's everything else? Otherwise, uh,
Everything
oh,
is good. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting ready to leave for California next week. A
wonderful.
girlfriend and I are going to walk a 5K at Disneyland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think it will be great fun. I'm not sure. I'm hoping.
No, it definitely will be. California will be good weather-wise, and you'll have fun. Every time I go there, I don't want to come back.
Well, hopefully the fires won't keep us away. I think they're not near Disneyland yet, so hopefully that'll be a good thing. I'm just gonna look here.
Now you must have an email. I just sent it to you.
Yeah, let me just
Let me.
maybe you sent it to my Gale Mote Associates email. Hold on. Nope,
I sent the
I'm not
Gmail.
seeing.
Okay, let me
Okay.
see it
Oh,
again.
wait, here it is. I see it now. There it is. It just took a little bit.
Perfect.
Okay, yes, I see it. All right.
Okay, so let me also open this at my end, and then if you want, you can let me see if you have the permissions to share your screen.
Well, do you want to drive? Do you want to advance the slides and I'll just kind of chime in as we go?
Uh, if you take control, I don't mind. You can move forward the slides. I know pretty much, or I can do the same as well at my end, whatever you prefer.
Why don't you drive? Then I don't have to kind of worry about that.
Perfect. So let me open it at my end.
I appreciate you sending these though, so I see them. Looks like you've done a great job with them, Ubaid. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. your trainings were very useful this time around as I was preparing this.
That's great. Well, I'm so pleased. I always love it when my students take it to heart and they're actually applying it, and then even years later, I hear back from them. So that's a great thing.
Now, let's do this. Now, do you see the slides at my
I
end?
do. I do.
Okay. So this is my intention of introducing this masterclass series, discovering proven frameworks to unlock team excellence. And today we are honored to host this meeting along with our first guest speaker, Gale Mote. Let me introduce you to her. And this is, I'm just going to read it as it is. And this is for our audience who would be watching it later as well. When people engage with Gale, they usually leave with one key question: where does she get that energy from? Gale retired in December 2022 after 32 years as a trainer and organizational development consultant. Gale was a team coach, trainer, and consultant. She created safe environment for team members to explore who they were individually and as a team. Providing practical techniques and skills training for real growth, Gale helped teams become more cohesive and accomplish amazing results. Her sessions were creative, energizing, and got results. Prior to starting her own company in 1990, Gale worked for various manufacturing enterprises, including Del Monte, Square D Corporation, Quaker Oats, and Noren Corporation. Gale was a certified professional in talent development, CPTD by the American Association for Talent Development. She is a certified coach and facilitator for EQ 2.0, a psychometric assessment which measures emotional intelligence and how it can impact people and the workplace. Gale is an authorized partner and accredited facilitator with the five behaviors of a cohesive team. She is a certified facilitator for Everything Disk Workplace and Everything Disk Management. Everything Disk is a transformational tool to help you understand yourself and others to have more effective relationships. She is a graduate of Crew College with multiple degrees in business, economics, and education. Gail holds a master's in business administration from the University of Iowa, where she was an adjunct lecturer in the Tippy College of Business professional MBA program for over 20 years. In 2014, she received one of the President and Provost Awards for teaching excellence from the University of Iowa.
Well done.
Thank you. No, I can vouch for that. Your program, your learnings, I have applied it through various points in time in my career ever since then. And I remember these teachings were applied directly and benefited my team in Iowa. And that was the times of COVID, a lot of challenging times. And these teachings have remained with me even right now when I'm facing these challenging circumstances. The strategies that we learned, they
Good.
never changed.
Good.
So now, it's we have planned it to be an approximately 45-minute question and answer session, and who this would be beneficial for. These master classes will be beneficial for leaders aiming to optimize team collaboration, managers seeking actionable frameworks to navigate hybrid work challenges, and professionals striving for improved team dynamics and innovation, and anyone passionate about leadership and team success. So these would be a series of master classes where we will have one guest speaker every month to speak about a topic. And what we learn in these masterclass series, why team dynamics matter, frameworks for leadership success, and sustaining innovation within teams. These are some of the topics that will be of interest to our ideal audience that will find useful information in these masterclasses. So with this, I would hand over the presentation to Gail, and we will start with our first question. That we have a series of questions I had planned for her. And if our audience, if anyone joins in and they have any questions, we can take them one by one.
Great.
So I want to start with the first question, and if you can please briefly outline the five dysfunctions of a team and explain why each is critical to address for team excellence. And I'll put on this slide for our audience so they can relate to our discussion.
Perfect. That all looks great, Ubaid. You did a wonderful job. So, yeah, that looks wonderful. So,
Thank you.
ready to go. All we need now are some participants.
Yeah, I think let's just wait a couple of minutes, and if
Yeah.
we don't have anyone, then we'll just start. Let me stop sharing the screen here, and
Are you going to allow them to ask questions via chat, or are you going to have them raise their hand, or how are you going to master that?
I had planned for it to be via chat if
Okay,
there is room for that, and I did allow for that setting earlier on as I was planning this meeting. So
great.
hopefully they shouldn't have any problem putting in questions through the chat.
Okay. And if you would monitor that chat for me, I mean, I'll try to watch it too, but in case I miss one, you can just interrupt me and let me know that there was a question that I needed to address. You know
Sure.
me, sometimes I get on a roll and then I forget that I'm supposed to be doing that.
You are very, your attention to detail is something that has benefited your students, I'm sure. And especially, I mean, I have learned quite a bit from your attention to detail to a lot of things.
Great. Good. I'll try to keep me on time too, so because we've got several questions here. One, two, three.
Sure. No, you can take as much time as you would like with each question. The floor is all yours as soon as we start in 1 minute.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll try not to go on and on and on, but it looks like about 5 minutes on each topic, but we'll just play it by ear.
Sure. Now, so you have no plans of coming out of retirement?
No.
Very nice.
No, no, I loved it when I was working, and now I'm living the dream on the other side. So yeah, no,
I think you
I
may you may consider, some maybe in a few years when you find that, people are there who would need benefit from, still they can benefit from your expertise.
I don't mind maybe doing something like this now and then, but no, I don't have any desire to load up my station wagon again and hit the road. No, I'd rather fill our motorhome up and Clint and I go see new parts of the country.
Well, my automatic note taker has entered the room. Let me admit him so they can make some automatic notes.
Perfect.
So we have one participant.
Yay.
Okay, okay. So I think we are right on time. If you would want, we can start right now or wait another minute if you suggest so.
Let's wait a couple minutes and we'll see if anyone joins us, and if not, we'll go for it.
Perfect.
This AI is incredible, isn't it, Ubaid? I mean, I know so little about it, but it just seems like it's fascinating.
It is fascinating, but my only take is that we have to just make sure we are using it properly to our own advantage in whatever capacities we are using it for.
Yep,
At the end of the day, it doesn't have emotions, and we are the ones who have to control it.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
There is a quote of Oprah Winfrey right in front of me. There is a diary that it's from Dean Graziosi, whose mastermind program I'm in. And it says, challenges are gifts that force us to search for a new center of gravity. Don't fight for them, just find a new way to stand.
I like it. I like that very much.
This was
It's
just in
so
front
true.
of us right now, so I just read it while we are waiting for our possible audience.
Mhm. So when will you actually start facilitating classes on your own, or have you done that?
So I have structured a program, and right now I am now learning how to digitally scale like the practice using digital marketing strategies, and that's what I'm learning on different platforms, actively learning in the mastermind platform. And then I have a coach that is also, teaching me and other students how to go about it because I haven't done this before, so this is
Hmm.
new to me how to scale this practice using the available digital marketing tools and how to get these clients. And so I'm building this useful resource for them so they can find some value while they are inside our community.
Great.
Okay, so let me share the screen once again. Mhm. So, do you see the screen?
No, I don't, but
No, you don't? Okay.
no. Mm-mm.
Let me do this. Okay, do you see it now?
I do.
Okay, perfect. So, if you don't mind, we can start now or still another minute or so we
No,
can.
I'm happy to go, and if people
Okay.
want to join us as we go along, that would be awesome.
Otherwise, they'll watch this recording. And so the first question is regarding understanding the five dysfunctions. And if you can briefly outline them for us and explain why is each critical to address for team excellence. And I'll put on these for our audience.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Bade. So, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team is a book that was written by Patrick Lencioni. Uh, believe it was early 1990. I mean, it was, or maybe 1998, something like that. But it has become a foundation for those of us who are passionate about team dynamics. And before I actually get into the dynamics of the five dysfunctions, I just want to make sure that we all understand that it's not just how team members work together, but it's the structure within which they work. I just like to highlight a few things that I think are really critical for teams. The first one is just a definition of a team itself. And a team is a small group. Typically, teams are between 5 to 7 is the most effective size, but trying not to get them above double digits if we can. So a team is a small group of people with complementary skills, which means that we embrace the diversity of the team. We really want to have people that have different skills and talents, personalities, backgrounds, so that we can really bring the best of everyone into the team. So it's a small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a shared purpose, which is different than goals. A purpose is the why we do what we do, what inspires us to bring the best of ourselves. Shared goals, and that's a key thing. You can't be a team if you don't have a shared goal. We all have to have skin in the game. We all have to have that to be effective. So they have to have a shared purpose, shared goals, and a working approach. And that's kind of where we start to get into the five behaviors of a cohesive team, overcoming the five dysfunctions, so that we can set up an approach for how we want to work together to maximize our success. And so they're committed to holding one another mutually accountable for those factors. And I just think that it's important that people understand that a team just doesn't happen on its own. One of the things that Patrick Lencioni always talked about was that teamwork is not a virtue. It's a choice. It's a strategic choice that organizations make because they understand the importance of it. And I think one of the things we're finding in organizations today is that we need teamwork at all the levels in an organization, and it starts at the top. You know, the executive team really needs to be a cohesive unit. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what team number one means. But then also that cascades down through the organization. And if you have dysfunction at lower levels in an organization where teams maybe aren't working, whether it's a project team or a departmental team or a hybrid team or a virtual team, I usually say that's a symptom of maybe something else. So maybe they're not getting the direction from leadership they need, and there could be some other things as well, which we can talk about. So I just wanted to give that as a little bit of an introduction, so that we kind of know how we create that. Also, there needs to be a foundation for team success. So again, all teams, when I'm working with teams and setting them up, we talk about making sure that we have that purpose, goals, and objectives, that we have clarity around what our norms are going to be. We have clarity in roles and responsibilities, who does what and why. We have boundaries in terms of decision making, who's empowered to do what in the team and why, making sure we have good feedback mechanisms, and then also that we have a lot of celebration and recognition for the team's success. So That's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I'll get back now to the question at hand. Again, going back to Pat Lencioni and the five dysfunctions of a team, the pyramid matters, and that's why I want you to just kind of follow along as we go through the pyramid, because each dysfunction creates or is an element of causing the next dysfunction. So the first dysfunction of a team is called the absence of trust. And this isn't trust like, I don't trust you because you're incompetent, or I don't trust you because you didn't do what you said you were going to do. It's a lack of vulnerability-based trust. It means that I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable being open and transparent and letting you know what I really feel, or letting you get to know me at a deeper level. So there's these walls that go up. So because we're not willing to be vulnerable and we're not willing to show ourselves, that creates the fear of conflict. And the fear of conflict is basically a lack of psychological safety. It's basically saying, I don't feel comfortable weighing in. And so maybe you're familiar with the term the meeting after the meeting. And this is where everyone kind of sits in a meeting or on a Zoom call and nobody's willing to raise their hand or say anything. But then after the meeting, everybody's got something to say, right? Well, I don't think we should do that, or whatever went on there. And that's because they didn't feel like they could be open and transparent with one another, going back to the vulnerability piece. So if I don't feel I can be real and vulnerable, I'm more likely to hold back. I'm not going to participate at an honest, open level. So we get this fear of conflict. I think Lencioni referred to it as artificial harmony, where we're just kind of going along to get along. And because of that, there's a lack of commitment. And the way to think about this is this key phrase that I used to share with all my students: weigh in equals buy-in. If I'm not willing to weigh in, then I'm probably not going to buy into whatever decision was made or action was assigned. It doesn't mean that I had to agree with it, but it meant that my voice was heard, that I felt like I had a way to share that with others. So because there's that ambiguity around, are we really on the same page? I don't know if you've ever left a meeting and you're pretty you're pretty sure that not everybody's on the same page about what we're supposed to do. That's kind of a sign of a lack of commitment. And because we have this lack of a commitment, then it's impossible to hold one another accountable, because I never agreed to that. Or that doesn't apply to me. So now we have this ability or inability to really be able to move forward collectively together. And because we're not willing to hold one another accountable, then we have this inattention to what we call collective results. And that's really what a team is about. It's not necessarily what each individual is doing, it's what the whole is doing because of the contributions of everyone on that team. And there's another really important point to mention here, and this is called team number one. And when you think about teams, especially when you're in a leadership level or you're at a manager or supervisory level, the minute you take on that responsibility of being a leader or manager, you automatically become part of two teams. There's the team you lead, which would be your direct reports. Like, let's say I'm the vice president of marketing, that is my team. And then there's the team that you are a member of, which would be your peers. Like if I was vice president of marketing, the other VPs on the executive team. And the question to ponder is, which one of those teams is most important to you? The team you lead or the team that you are a member of? Well, the majority of people would say the team I lead, right? This is where I spend my time. These are where all my goals are. These are the people that I know better. These are the people that I like better, maybe. But the answer is, and always should be, the team that you're a member of. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to prioritize the needs of your team over the needs of the organization. You're going to let your individual status or ego or whatever it is that you're working towards not be more important than what the team is trying to accomplish. And so that's why I go back and I say it has to be a shared goal. It has to be shared purpose. We all have to be in it together to be able to make that work. And so that's what starts to happen within teams is they they are dysfunctional because they don't have each one of these elements to help them become more cohesive.
No, perfect. I think that's very well laid out for our audience. And I remember Mikey being the one of those people in the book. Like if I were to recall an example who would be wanting to, be for the people, and that's what she considered her first team, while Catherine didn't really like that, and that led to her being fired from the executive team eventually.
Yes, eventually, yes.
Okay, now let's talk about some of the application of these frameworks. How can leaders practically apply these frameworks in today's hybrid and remote work environments? And what are some common challenges leaders face when trying to implement these frameworks and how they can overcome them? If you would like to shed some light on these topics.
Sure, I'm happy to. So let's talk about the first one about how we can practically apply these frameworks. I think they apply equally whether you have in-person teams or you have hybrid teams or you have completely remote teams. The dynamics of teams are the same. Obviously, some of the challenges are different. So for example, when you get into a virtual team where everyone is remote or spread out all over the world, you miss out on some of that connection, which helps with the building the vulnerability-based trust. You don't have the water cooler chats. You also have the challenge of sometimes after the meeting, when you're walking down the hallway back to your office, you're still having a conversation about something. Well, the people who've logged off the call, they miss out on all of that. So I think one of the keys to practically apply this, first of all, and above everything else, is awareness. You really, as a team, need to be aware of these 5 behaviors. You have to internalize them. So if that requires training or coaching, great, so that everybody understands that. And there's some great assessment tools, and maybe we'll kind of get into that as we go along, that will really try to help you understand where your strengths and weaknesses are as a team member, but also as a team itself relative to those 5 behaviors. So I think awareness is one. And then I think intentionality. Um, I'll just give you a quick example. When I was teaching in the MBA program at the University of Iowa Tippie College of Business, I had my students for 4 weekends. And so every weekend we worked on these 5 behaviors, right? We'd start working on trust and then conflict and then how to make decisions together and so forth. But every weekend I always did things around trust. I always did things around that. And at the last class, I remember having a student come up to me because we were doing this huge um, simulation where they were going to be in conflict and they had to solve a decision together, make a decision together. Um, and one of my students said to me, "I trust my classmates more than I trust my team members back at the office. How can that be? We've only been together 4 weekends." And I told them, I said, "It's because we've been intentional. We understand the importance of these 5 behaviors, and we've been very intentional about making that happen." And then I think, it's really going back to what I said at the start of our time together, is when, especially in virtual or hybrid teams, creating that foundation is really critical. So setting expectations, especially around norms, communication norms, meeting norms, how you're going to, what tools you're going to use for communication, and understanding that different team members might have different communication preferences. Some team members would prefer to have text, some would like to use chat or whatever. I don't know. But it's really, really critical when you get into a team that you lay out, what do we need for success? And there's some great exercises you can do with that, even if it's just getting all the team members together, either virtually or in person, and saying, "Here's what I do. This is my role. Here's what I need most from you in order for me to be successful and for the team to be successful." And because I think a lot of times that's taken for granted. We assume that we know what other team members need and want, but we don't. And that kind of goes back to something else that I teach, which is called an outward mindset. It comes from the Arbinger Institute and their book, The Outward Mindset, because we all have a tendency to think inward about I have this job and I've got to get this done and this is important to me. And we forget about what we do and how it influences everybody else or how it might affect someone else. And so by using more of an outward mindset than an inward mindset, we're asking better questions. We're connecting with people as people. We're finding out what their needs are and saying, okay, what can we do so that we work together in a way that your needs and my needs are met in in terms of trying to accomplish the team's goals. So I think again, I think awareness, and maybe that's building the skills through coaching and training. I think intentionality from the leader on the team, but also the team members, that they understand how important these things are, and that you continually keep it in front of you. It's not teamwork doesn't happen by accident and teams don't develop by accident. It takes you have to make it as important as maybe the task oriented things that you're doing every day. I remember one time I had a senior manager that I was working with their teams, and he said, you know, I just don't think people are getting this, Gale. We've taken them through the team training, we've done all this stuff, but I just don't think they're getting them. And I said, well, why don't you take me through your senior team meeting? Show me your agenda of your last senior team meeting. And it was all stuff that was related to, whatever they were working on, whether it was objectives or goals for that week or HR issues or whatever. And I said, so where on this agenda are you focusing on your team and where your team is strong and what your team needs to work on, or where you're at in that whole thing? And he kind of looked at me and he said, I don't have it on there. And I said, well, if you don't focus on it, it's not going to develop. There comes a time when teams get to be more we call norming forming, storming, norming, performing. There is that level that they get to, but it's a guiding process, and whoever is the leader of the team, whether that's a project team lead or a manager in a department, you are responsible for taking the team through that growth. So yeah, so I think those are some of the challenges. Maybe getting too focused on the here and now and not looking forward enough. I don't know.
Oh, perfect. Very well said. I think these are very relevant in today's hybrid and remote work environments, and this information will be very useful for people leading these teams in today's hybrid remote work environment. Now, we are talking about building trust. I think part of it you must have already answered, but let's just touch on it briefly. Trust is the foundation of any high-performing team. What strategies can leaders use to build and maintain trust within the teams, especially in today's virtual settings?
Yeah. Um, well, I think it goes back to, first of all, you have to make a connection. So, and that vulnerability-based trust relies letting your guard down a little bit. So I think just doing some simple kinds of meeting openers. So let's say if you first put a team together, or even if the team's been together for a while, one of Lencioni's favorite exercises is personal histories. So you just kind of go around and you ask the team, so where did you grow up? What was your birth order? Were you the oldest, the youngest, in the middle? Um, and what was a significant challenge that you had, growing up? Um, and it's surprising. I've used that even with teams that have been together for 5 or 6 years, and believe me, they don't know that information about each other because they haven't taken the time to really do it. And it's not about touchy-feely. It's not about any of that. It's just about learning to be real with one another. So there's lots and lots of different exercises that you can do there. But I'm going to share one that I think is particularly important, and that's understanding one another's personal preferences. So whether you use Myers-Briggs or True Colors or Everything Disc, any of them, it's important for team members to understand that this is who I am. Um, this is what stresses me. This is what motivates me. Um, this is how I show up when we're in conflict. These are the good behaviors I bring to conflict. These are not so good. And this is what we need from each other. So you can learn how to tap into each other's strengths and weaknesses. You can use Strengths Finder too. Um, I just think everything and anything that you can do to help team members get through that. The other thing I think is just helping people understand that you have to own your behaviors. So showing up as a problem solver and a change agent, not a victim. I love um, the term, the question behind the question. John Miller wrote the book, The QBQ. And so instead of saying, well, why does anybody do that and who's responsible for that and when is somebody going to do something about that, you ask yourself, what can I and how can I? And you really start taking ownership to say, listen, if I need to be the change that I want this team to make, I need to be an active part of that process because otherwise you can get into the finger pointing, which is not healthy when it comes to building trust. And let me just look here because I know there was one more thing I wanted to. There's a thing called a team effectiveness exercise where you actually go around and you have the team members share something that they think is a strength of every other person on the team, and then also something they think everybody else on the team could improve in. That is not an exercise that I would do early on in a team. In a team, I would work harder on things like doing a disc or working on personal histories, having just a high trust mindset itself. It's amazing to me. Mindset drives behavior. And a lot of team members have this low trust mindset. It's like, well, you have to earn my trust. And, you did something to me 5 years ago, so I'm never going to trust you again. And I think you have to come out with a high trust mindset, which is, I believe the best of you and I expect the best of you. And you have my trust until you give me a reason not to. And if somebody does something that hurts your trust, then you need to have a conversation about that. But then you also have to have forgiveness. You know, we're human beings, so we're messy. We're gonna make mistakes. But that's kind of the fun and the joy of being in a team is that you can lean on each other and you can help each other become the best versions of yourself. So there are lots and lots of exercises that you can do to build that connection, to get to know one another. One another's preferences. I also think that setting norms kind of helps to build trust because now you're clarifying expectations about what you need from one another. So it allows you to lean into those and show that you can be someone who can be counted on to do the right thing for the team. Those are all good ways to start.
Perfect, very well said. Be a problem solver. What can I? And how can I? These are the questions that they should be asking.
Yes.
Very well said. And handling conflict. Healthy conflict is essential for team growth. How can leaders encourage constructive conflict and prevent destructive dynamics?
Yeah. This goes back to that creating a safe place for people to weigh in. Amy Edmondson has a great book called The Fearless Organization. And if you get a chance to see her, I think she's got some TED Talks and some YouTube things out there. But psychological safety really is a matter of being vulnerable, saying things like, I don't know, I need help, I was wrong, because you have to have situational humility to create a safe space. You have to be able to come in and say, listen, this is a problem. None of us have, we don't know the answer to it. That's why we're all here, or we have a challenge that we don't know. But if we can all bring the best of ourselves collectively together, we're going to come up with a better answer than any one of us would have done individually, which obviously is that synergy. But you have to have the situational humility. You can't say, well, I'm the smartest person in the room and I know what the answer is, and we're just going to do that because team members want to be valued. The other thing that I think is a really important thing is you have to be able to ask good questions and then be able to listen to the responses, even if you disagree with them. So being curious and making sure that everyone is participating. On virtual calls, I know a lot of people don't like to use the camera, but I think cameras are really important and because you can watch people's reactions to statements that are made or things, when they're behind the scenes, you can't really see what they're saying. But when you can watch to see maybe somebody said something, another person had kind of a little body language because, that's how we respond normally first is with our body. and just be able to come around and say, so if I was leading a meeting and one person said something and I saw something out of the corner of my eye, I wouldn't go to that person directly and say, well, what do you think? That's kind of calling them out in front of everybody. But I might say something like, that's really an interesting point, and it I think it begs to have us look at other things that might tie into that. So let's just kind of go around right now, and hear what everybody else has to say about that. So let's start over here, not with the person who kind of showed the bad body language, but just there's little techniques that you can do. The other thing I think that is important is everything DISC has a tool called productive conflict, and one of the things that we do is based on our styles, we try to understand what are the good behaviors that we can bring into and we can use those, and then what are the destructive behaviors. So for example, someone who has more of what we call a dominant style, or they're very results oriented, they're very action oriented. So, let's just make a decision and get on with it. Sometimes when they're really stressed out, they can turn into like a bully, and they can get maybe a little more dominant in the way they communicate, and that can shut other people down. So it's learning learning about yourself, but then as a team coming together and saying, okay, how can we use the best of each other so that when we disagree, right, we can move forward. And I always use the phrase the Abilene paradox. If you haven't seen that, it's as old as dirt, but it's about this family who every they the dad said, let's all go to Abilene, Texas, and it's 104-degree heat, and nobody really wants to go, but nobody says that they don't want to go, so they end up going and they have a horrible time, and then they start blaming each other, and in reality, if they would have all just spoken up and said what they were really thinking and feeling, they would have avoided the whole thing. So I always tell my team members, don't go to Abilene. So it's it's thinking about what can we do to make it easier for people to participate? And so, even if it's going around one at a time, if it's putting a question out and and now think virtually, putting a question out and having people chat their responses. Use breakout rooms. If you've got a large team, um, sometimes people are afraid of speaking out in front of a larger group. So, use the breakout rooms, put two or three people into a breakout room, let them chat about something, and then have one person be the spokesperson when they come back to the larger meeting, and chat about that. So going back to Amy Edmondson, I think that's situational humility, encouraging inquiry, getting people very curious about asking their questions, being very good listeners, making sure that people understand that it's okay to fail, right? This is again a problem we don't know. So if we make mistakes, we're going to show grace to one another. Um, and then I think, just making sure that we express appreciation for when uh, people participate. If even if you disagree with what someone said, you respect that their voice is important. So you make people feel valued, and you create that environment. But I always had my teams create conflict norms. So now that you know each other better, what are the behaviors that you want to demonstrate in a team, and what are the ones that you don't? What are the ones that are helpful when you're disagreeing, and what are the ones that aren't? And let's try to hold each other accountable to those.
Perfect. No, I think very well said. And let's move on to our next question, which relates to communications. And with miscommunications as a common pitfall in teams, what are some effective communication strategies that teams can adopt to enhance collaboration?
Yeah. Um, well, the first question is, what's at the root cause of the miscommunication? So, it's like, oh, I think a lot of that is we make assumptions that someone understood what we said. This is especially important in multicultural teams, because maybe you didn't understand what someone said, or you weren't sure about what someone said, but you didn't want to say so because maybe that was going to, cause some issues. So I think it's important that you make it be clear that if I don't understand something, or it's okay for me to ask, right? And that kind of goes back to the psychological safety. But miscommunication too can happen because we don't have clear norms set up. For example, if we have a meeting, are we going to publish notes from those meetings? Because some cultures that's kind of like, no, that means you don't trust me if you're going to send those notes out. But if we are going to send notes, then what are the main things that we want to include so that we make sure everybody's clear on that? Um, I think it's being proactive, but it's also having good follow through. Um, so especially in virtual teams, because people are spread out all over the world, or they're maybe working out of their home. And unless you have clarity in terms of what is the most important thing we need to be communicating, why is that important? What's the method? How are we going to communicate that in the best way? And then how do we measure whether it's working? Yeah, I think you have to kind of keep tabs on uh, communication because obviously it's everything, right? It's the it's the mechanism by which team members um, lean into each other and again, as I said, build the best, bring the best out of each other. So uh, I obviously like the using things like Myers-Briggs and DISC and those kinds of things because I think what it does is it allows people to understand what they need from one another. Um, and that way, people don't get into this mindset, well, I just can't work with this person, right? Because they don't communicate like I communicate. What you do is you learn to adjust your style when you're communicating with someone who's different than you. But again, I think it also goes back to what I said at the beginning of our time together is really setting good communication norms so that you understand what's important that we communicate. And if you feel like you've been left out of something or that something slipped through the cracks, then bring it forward and without blame. We conduct autopsies without blame, and just basically say, okay, what happened here? Nobody did it on purpose. How do we prevent something like that from happening again? And what's the best way to do that, which takes you right back into another problem solving decision making um, opportunity.
Oh, perfect. Again, very well said. And this has, I have seen it firsthand being part of the teams that these communication strategies are very important in multicultural teams. And how you navigate through these challenges is something that kept our teams moving forward because we had a very, good communication system in which no one was afraid to voice any concerns discussions within the teams, and that is very important within any teams that you work on. Perfect.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing too, Ubaid. I think it requires empathy. I mean, it requires stepping in someone else's shoes. And this is especially important, like if you have hybrid teams where you like have two or three team members who are at the office and maybe one or two that are spread out. You really have to put yourself in their shoes to understand what must it feel like. So allowing time on your Zoom calls or your Teams or whatever you're using for a little conversation ahead of the meeting. For example, have something up on the whiteboard that allows people to chime in. And then afterwards, that little water cooler chat stuff helps. I remember in the MBA program, I also ran a Harvard simulation on multicultural teams, and it was kind of funny because what the whole simulation did was you divided people up so that they took on a culture that was not their own for the most part. And so, for example, they were typing and then the computer would slow it down because you had to translate what the other person was saying. And they could feel that frustration of maybe being someone whose native language wasn't English and trying to participate in the team. And so I think it developed empathy and an awareness and understanding of how we can communicate better together.
Perfect. So next question relates to enhancing accountability within teams.
Mhm.
How can leaders foster a culture of accountability without micromanaging? And what role does feedback play in this process?
Well, feedback is essential, so I'll start with that. It's important to understand in accountability in teams that we're talking peer-to-peer feedback. Um, in a typical hierarchical system, it's like, well, the manager is the one who gives the feedback, but that kind of creates a triangle. So let me tell you what I'm thinking about here. So I'm on a team and I'm frustrated with one of my other team members because they're not communicating with me effectively or they're not giving me the information that I need on a timely basis. So instead of going directly to that team member, I go to the team leader and I say, so and so's not working the way I need them to. And so then the team leader goes to that person. And then that person's trust for me drops because it's like, okay, why didn't you come directly to me? Well, I didn't come directly to you because we don't know how to communicate with each other. So now we go back to the point of you really have to help people understand what they can do to work more effectively together. So if I'm a leader, manager, supervisor, team leader, whatever, I have to make sure that the team members understand, tell me first. If you have an issue with one of your team members, go talk to the team member. And then if the two of you can't work it out, then the three of us will sit down together. There has to be a way to say it's accountability, right? I'm not throwing you into the bus. I will be there to help you and coach you, but I need you to work together. So the leader is the ultimate arbiter of accountability, but they are not the primary arbiter of accountability. And that's really important for leaders to understand. But the other thing is this, if the leader won't hold someone accountable, then they won't hold each other accountable. So I know I have worked with leaders who are a certain style where they hate conflict, they hate having feedback conversations, they don't want any part of it. But if you can't do it, then your team members are going to start saying things like, well, you want us to do the job that you can't do. So it's very, very important that they know how to give and receive constructive feedback um, and that they have good training in that. But again, I will go back to styles. Different people like to receive information in a different way. So the better you can understand that and learn how to flex around that, the better it is. Um, the everything disc model, they have a Catalyst platform now where team members can actually go out and run they can look at one of their team members and say, maybe this is a team member I'm struggling with, and they can see where they're very similar, where they're very different. They can start looking at things like how do I best approach this person, and then getting advice on how they can work better together. So I'm sure a lot of those platforms have that, but I think take advantage of those kinds of things so that the team members can become a little more well versed in that. But obviously, I think training and feedback is absolutely essential. Not only giving it but receiving it. Nobody likes to be told that I'm doing something that somebody else doesn't really appreciate, but you have to do it with a curious mindset, not a defensive mindset. Be curious. Be curious, not furious with people you do not understand. So asking the questions and thinking about, okay, what might I be missing here? Not rushing to judgment, not being judgmental, trying to keep your emotions in check. This is where emotional intelligence comes into play. But really thinking about that so that you can make each other better in the right way.
Perfect. No, very well said. And this is going to be very useful for our audience, all these useful information.
Great. Good. I'm happy.
Thank you so much for such detailed and elaborating all these answers so well for our audience. And the next question relates to inspiring motivation. How do you recommend leaders keep their teams motivated and committed to their goals, particularly during the challenging times?
Yeah. Well, It's funny. My last name is Mote, and I always used to tell my students you're about to get motivated. So I don't know if that's the right way to go about it or not, but this is essential. And disengaged team members or disengaged employees for that matter are not going to be productive employees, right? They're not going to be productive team members. They're not going to be the best versions of themselves. So the question is, how do you keep them engaged? Well, first of all, you get to know them as a person. You keep them engaged by making sure they understand their value to the team. And that doesn't just come from the leader, that comes from each other. So if that's showing recognition or appreciation or a thank you, that goes a long way. It also means getting the right team members in the right seats of the bus. So if someone is in a role that doesn't play necessarily to their strengths, and I'm not saying that every job is perfect. You're always going to have to do parts of your job that you don't like to do, but everybody's going to be the best version of themselves when they're in a role where they really feel like they're contributing and doing their best work. Um, Pat Lencioni has a new book, the 6 Types of Working Genius. And this is a really good way for team members to find out where they contribute best in a team environment. And so, if you think about a project that goes from the very start to the very end, so like just coming up with the idea and then getting that idea to have a little bit of formation around it and then galvanizing people around it and then implementing it and all those kinds of things. Different people are good at different things there. So if you have someone who's not an idea person in that role, they're going to be miserable. Just like if you have an idea person who's in the implementation piece. So learning how they can bring their strengths and talents, that helps to keep people engaged. But I also think celebrating small wins is huge. When you look at some of the projects that teams are doing these days, they're like not a 3-week project, they're a 3-year project. And you can get so far down in the weeds that you forget how important it was that we just got that one little milestone done. So, just like any project planning, you've got critical milestones. Don't forget to celebrate those. Don't for, and even to celebrate some of the failures, to say, what did we learn from that so that we can do those after action reports and those kinds of things that go with it. So I think it's important that team members lift each other up. So it's not just the managers or the team leaders' responsibility to motivate the team, and keep the team inspired. But find out the things that to the team that are really important. Some people like public praise, some people don't. Some people want a thank you note, some people don't. Some people, would like to have an extra day of paid time off or something. Think about what's important to that team. I would also say this, make sure that the team celebrates together. Now, in virtual environments, this can be a little bit more challenging because you don't have everybody in the same space, but I have seen teams do some really creative things, like they've had like a creative happy hour at Friday at 4 o'clock virtually. They've had recipe exchanges where they can have fun with some of those things and celebrate. So even though you might not be in the same room together, that doesn't mean that you can't keep one another motivated. Another great thing in virtual environments is to have a buddy system so that you've got 2 team members, especially for new team members, maybe a mentor or something, to make sure that somebody's checking in on them, to make sure that they're doing okay. How are things going? Making sure that they feel connected to the team and inspired to keep doing good work. And one more thing about inspiring motivation, it also helps if they're internal customers, whoever they're working with, so for example, if the engineering team would celebrate the operations team or whatever once in a while, that always goes a long way.
No, perfect. The celebration within teams and within departments is always a good gesture. And thank you for answering it so well. And I think this is our last question.
Okay.
Regarding future trends, what emerging trends or new frameworks do you believe will shape the future of team excellence and leadership?
Well, I will say that the things we've talked about here today, Bade, I think the foundation of a team, the five behaviors of a cohesive team, those things are solid. And I think they're going to apply to teams forever and ever. Amen. For as long as we go. Um, some of the emerging trends, there's technology that's changing, um, AI, some of those kinds of things that are coming into the environment. And again, I think it's important that teams understand how do we use that? How does that apply? And let's not just get onto something because it's the next greatest thing that's out there. If we can use it in the right way and it will be beneficial to the team, then yeah, let's go for it. Um, Disappointing to say that a trend that continues, as far as I know from some of the things I see from the Gallup organization, is that there's still a pretty high level of disengagement. Um, virtual teams as well as intact teams. And I think when there's stress, in the economy or other things going on, for example, locally here in Iowa, John Deere is one of our largest manufacturers, and they're going through significant layoffs right now because the ag economy is pretty down. Um, it's sometimes hard for teams to keep functioning in a positive way through all of that. So I think it's important that we kind of lean always on the things we've talked about today, the basics. Um, but I do see trends in terms of making it harder for teams to stay in one place. So teams that suffer from a lot of turnover struggle to be effective. And so when you have significant layoffs or changes or transfers or all those kinds of things, it really messes with the dynamics of a team. So I worry a little bit about that, but I also know that once you've been a part of a really good team, it's like muscle memory. Those things come right back to you after a certain amount of time. I don't see virtual teams going away. I know there's a trend right now for a lot of organizations to want to bring people back into the office at least some days of the week so that they have that face-to-face time. But I don't see virtual teams going away because you're still going to have international teams, right? You're still going to have teams spread out all over the globe. So I do think it's important that we continue to innovate um, and find even new and better ways to maximize that virtual team experience because I think it's going to be around.
Sure, no, future seems very exciting, and I think you said it very right. We have to just make sure we are using it the right way to our advantage. And I think this is all the questions that I had planned. This is the community I was telling you about, and healthcare burnout recovery. So far, we have 10 members inside the community, and this is since we started. And now I am learning how to get as many members in our free community. This is a free group, by the way. And then inside the classroom, we have paid courses as well. If someone is interested in those programs, they can enroll through the school platform. And this is some information regarding who this is for and what I plan to serve as for members of this community. So this will be a supportive community, and this is specifically for people. The marketing message is going forward to people in healthcare suffering from burnout, but I'm also building a maximizing team performance program that might benefit all the audience, including healthcare and other professionals, if they choose to be part of this community. But this is open to all, and this is what we are working on. And I think that's it. Let me stop my screen share here. Okay, so any final words for our audience? And thank you so much for being available to be part of this inaugural session and to help us kickstart this masterclass series.
Oh, well, I am so delighted that you asked me, And I would just say, teamwork makes the dream work, to get the old saying going. Nobody can do it alone. We're much better when we work together. And I think you'll find that when you learn the skills of being a really effective, solid team member, a good team player, I failed to mention Lencioni's other book, The Ideal Team Player, which is one who's hungry, humble, and smart. Um, and that's EQ smart. That's not IQ smart. Um, I think you're going to find that it ripples out into all areas of your life. So if you're on a board or if you're a member of an association or if you're coaching your kid's soccer team or those kinds of things, these being a good team player and understanding how to lead a great team, boy, these things will just they spread out and you're going to find that you're going to feel more fulfilled and confident as a contributor in all areas of your life, even your family, not just the work team.
No, perfect. Very well said. And thank you so much once again. And if we need any future assistance from you, we'll always reach out if there is anything that we need
Yeah,
guidance on. And I know you have been very, thank you so much for being available on such a short notice.
no, my pleasure, my pleasure. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Professor Mote, and have a great rest of your evening. And thank you for being available for our audience.
Great. Well, good luck with your program and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Take care.